Number one, what are the odds that with so many sightings that it would not be a genuine non-Earth phenomenon? Could you take the fact that there are many sensors that have picked up things that we don't seem to be able to do in this world, and there are lots of reports, some of them are eyewitness, a lot of eyewitness reports. So what kind of credibility would you put on lots of reports? Well, it would depend how clear the reports are, right? If somebody had a clear photograph of a ship we'd never seen before, that would be pretty convincing. But what do we know about Bigfoot and the Loch Ness Monster? One thing we know about Bigfoot and the Loch Ness Monster is it's really hard to get a clean photograph because they're not real. Things that are real are relatively easier to photograph. Now, it's not 100% correlation, but it's pretty good. And with so many things, why do we only have unclear photos of something that looks like a blotch or a glowing cigar? But it's never like a good photograph, right? We never get that good photograph. So I would say to you that the lack of a good photograph after so many decades of trying to get one probably is a pretty strong indication that there are no flying saucers. All right? So now I'm giving you my opinion based on this filter. The filter that we haven't gotten a photograph yet, really? That tells me it's not real. Now, what are the other possibilities? Are you ready? Here are the other possibilities. Number one, we just can't get a good photo because they're fast. Maybe that's the whole story. They're just fast. Can't get a photo. What if it's a U.S. technology that we just don't want other people know that we have? Or some other country's technology? Could be. Maybe some country, maybe the U.S. has some technology, but it seems to violate physics. I don't think that the United States or China or any advanced country, if I had to guess, and I do, I don't think anybody has anything that violates physics. So I'm going to say that that alone eliminates even alien technology. Because we don't think alien technology is going to violate physics, right? You know, even if it were different where they came from. Physics are physics when you get here. They can't violate the law of physics once they get to our planet. I mean, maybe. Could be something we don't know about reality. But I'm going to give you my more controversial theory, which you've never heard before. Are you ready? For the best theory about UFO sightings you have ever seen. Have you ever heard me mention that we might be living in a simulation? And that the simulation hypothesis, that we're just sort of some software construct by some other entity that was smart enough to do it at some point in the past. If you buy into that theory that we're a simulation, there is a very shocking part of this, which is that we would be built under a theory of resource constraint. In other words, if you were going to sit down and build a simulated world, just in today's technology, would you build the world to use only 10% of the capacity of your computer? Probably not, right? Because if you were going to build a simulation in order to make it as realistic and complicated and rich as you wanted it to be, you'd probably use something closer to as much of the capacity of the computer or whatever you're working on as you could. Would you say that, first of all, that's a reasonable assumption, that whatever resources would be used if we were a simulation, they would use most of it, because you always do. You're always going to use most of it because you need it all. Now, suppose they used up most of their computing sources creating Earth. That's reasonable. Earth's pretty complicated, right? I also believe that if we are simulated, our history is created on demand. It doesn't exist until you need it. In other words, whatever is under the ground in your backyard, if nobody's ever dug a hole, There doesn't need to be anything there until you dig the hole. The simulation isn't going to waste a lot of time filling in all the details at the center of the Earth if nobody's ever going to go there. It'll never be observed. So as you observe it or measure it, it becomes real, and then it has to fill in enough details to be compatible with other histories. And when it's not compatible, or the simulation can't make it compatible, it gives one of you a false memory and says you remembered it wrong. So that's how you get all these different histories that don't match. You just say, well, I guess that other person remembered it wrong. And you just go on with your life. But we have actually maybe infinite, or lots of them, histories that don't even match each other. So that would be the simulation. That's how you would build it. Now, if this simulation had tapped out just to make Earth, but it was also designed to expand over time, and let's say the person who built the simulation got a better job and increased the number of CPUs or processors, and over time could build another Earth once they had enough processing power. What would it look like before you could add the detail? It would look like this. It would look like a spaceship that you couldn't get a good read on, that everybody would look at it and they wouldn't see it clearly. Because the moment we see it clearly, the simulation has to build a history. And to build a history that would support an alien spacecraft requires building a whole planet, a whole civilization. It's way too big for the simulation. So instead, while the simulation doesn't have enough computing power, we'll see indications of this future, but it's not until we get the first picture that the past will be created by the simulation. And that's when that alien planet will become real. And that at the moment, there is no alien life, but there will be. And when there will be, it doesn't mean that we evolve, until there is. It means it becomes completely real at one moment in time that hasn't happened yet.